Howdy ho, everyone. How you doing? This is Sharon Combs with UCDI Leadership and Do Something Daily LLC. I'm here with LaWayne Perkins, president of CS Assist. And tonight we are going to finalize our new in November series, even though it's December 1st. We do want to finish it up from last week. And we're also going to talk about duodenoscopes, just some of the things with it. Some of you may be familiar with Corey Ofsted from her work with Amy. She wrote the foreword for the book Wow, the Pandemic, but she has an awesome article out, and it really just goes into a lot of the different concerns, possibilities, issues with these scopes, and we're going to talk about that tonight as well. If you don't know what it is, healthcare providers use those scopes and endoscopic retrograde to use these procedures, like they diagnose and treat diseases in the pancreas and your bile ducts. If you don't know that, in SPD, you already know that. If you're not in SPD, pancreas, things dealing with pancreatic cancer. What's my man's name from Point Break? Dirty Dancing, Patrick Swayze. So design flaws have made them very difficult to clean, very difficult to sterilize. There are areas that you're not able to reach in them. And now people are coming up with new ways to really be able to sterilize this so that there's not many more superbugs. The inability to clean them has led to several outbreaks of antibiotic-resistant superbug infections and scope redesigns. In short, because they couldn't sterilize them, there were more harmful pathogens and deadly viruses, things that could kind of come and do damage to your body. LaWayne, do you know where the first outbreak was with these duodenoscopes?
You know what? Actually, 2013. In 2013, the CDC alerted the FDA about a potential link with endoscopes and a multi-resistant bacteria, or what we call MDR. Now, one of the earliest outbreaks known was actually in Los Angeles County at University of California, Los Angeles Medical Center, where a family of bacteria found in the gastrointestinal tract was responsible for an outbreak. But if you were to Google the amount of superbugs superbugs the doctors considers infectious because they are resistant to antibiotics, and the fatality rate is up to somewhere up roughly 50%. And you can fact check that. One easy way to fact check that, I was asking in West Virginia at the time, and if you just go to the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources, they'll tell you, that how many superbugs, up to 50% of folks who unfortunately are victims, they don't survive. So it was clearly in this case a design flaw. One of the parts of the scope, the elevator flap or elevator lift, it was so hard to clean, and even when the technician followed the IFU,
still, yeah,
it was so hard to clean, and it was really called the elevator channel, and they were just so difficult to reprocess when compared to other flexible endoscopes, and this is due to the design, which includes a side viewing tip, 4-step elevators, elevator channel. But despite cleaning and all of the rigorous efforts that the most skilled sterile processing technician would do, a bacteria still existed on some of the scope surfaces, and that's where the risk started.
Do you because you said roughly 50%, but they do like 500,000 procedures a year. These scopes are using about 500,000 procedures a year. So do you think that this is are these isolated events, or do you think like Sterile Nation on the whole has difficulties?
Oh yeah, this certainly wasn't an isolated event. This is news all over in our community, all over the country. And it led to some significant changes. A lot of retraining. A lot of manufacturers jumped into conclusion to reprocess and rectify some of these design flaws. But on the other side of that dial, what was impressive was how our networks were working, specifically the CDC and FDA. Because they were on point.
They were communicating.
We had a concise message, no matter what state you were in, no matter what hospital, there was a clear message on what's the way forward. So it was kudos to our taxpayer agencies that was delivering that message. You know, and it was in tandem, right? It wasn't look. The CDC wasn't saying go left. The FDA wasn't saying go right, and
Right.
we didn't have what we're seeing now um, during this pandemic. Let's just call it
A
what it is.
special task force saying no, go up. Right. You
That's
know
right.
what's crazy is before COVID hit, before the first quarter of this year, when we really had to put all hands on deck with COVID, these duodenoscopes, they were like the thing. Like as late as the last quarter of last year, the FDA was still sending out communications to different facilities, making sure that everybody was on one accord and doing the right thing. Because, and I just, I'm going to put a link to an article that was sharing that information. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
absolutely.
FDA
That's
safety
right.
communication to provide update and just
That's
making
right.
sure that all the hospitals and all medical facilities, all GI, like everybody knew this is how you are to do this. So, man, you know what's crazy? If we wouldn't have been so freaked out, and I'm just going to speak on me, I can't say the FDA or other people were freaked out by COVID. If people wouldn't have been so, if I mean, in hindsight, it's 2020, but if we wouldn't have been like, oh my God, COVID is so different, then we probably could have used some of those communication channels and like held our form, like trusted some of the processes we have in place instead of because of something new, allowing everyone to speak on it. Because that was one of the, I think that was one of the hiccups that we did with COVID. Just
I
and there's
think
grace there. I don't know that I could have done it better, but that was one of the hiccups there. But here with these duodenoscopes, everybody was uniform and on one accord, supporting one another instead of throwing one another under the bus.
well the denominator, the common denominator here were manufacturers, right? And one of the largest manufacturers of these scopes was Olympus. You know, Olympus has vast resources,
They
but
do.
even with some of those redesign and efforts, there was still some bacteria. No, we they got it right eventually. It's still getting it right. But what was more impressive about the FDA is that although the FDA investigated this outbreak back in 2013, they didn't take action until about 2015, when they ordered scope makers to conduct further studies. Um, but up in 2018, what they call post-market surveillance, which is in layman's terms, a study or report that can show you all of the findings that they came up with and what was the outcome. They were still looking at it up until 2018. That's 2 years ago that we
Wow.
discovered or uncovered, not discovered, uncovered in 2013. We're still unveiling and getting new information just recently, 2 years ago.
So Arlene is saying that she used to do 2 rounds of HOD and ETO at a previous hospital. Is that with for each scope? Let me take her name off there because that. But you know what that does show though too is the fact that that design flaw.
Right.
Like how did and we need them. We need these scopes. We need them. We
Well,
need these scopes.
we,
But
we have
how
a,
did it get past with that design flaw? Lila,
we have
how
a
you doing?
right. We have a chief educator in the house. Lila, what are your thoughts here?
Well, when I saw that comment on here, like, I think that's the biggest problem is that the process is different everywhere you go, right? So if you're someone who is challenged with going to traveling in facilities and learning the processes, which you pick up in other places may not always be the best practice, but sometimes it's the, whatever the risk assessment has shown us that we need to do. So cleaning them 2 times before or HLDing them two times, I mean, that seems excessive, but I also think that because of that super bug, it put a lot of fear in a lot of us and not knowing how to be able to remedy that situation. And we found a lot of flaws in what we thought were great practices. Cleaning them, we're throwing the brush through, we're looking, we're doing visual inspections, and still somehow, some way, right, we still can't get in there clean. And it's just a very hard. That elevator channel is very tricky. Some things get stuck behind there, and if you're in a facility where it's time is essence and we're trying to get stuff turned over, how much time is too much time when it comes to cleaning something, because at the end of the day, they have another procedure scheduled in 2 hours and they need that turned over, or we're not even going to have the culture back if we don't get this out by later on today because the culture may not happen and we may not get the results back in time. So there's so many factors that go into it, and it's very difficult to train people to clean these ERCPs and do adenoscopes, and because it's one of those things that if you don't do it all the time, it becomes very easy to miss a step. We have buddy systems created. And in where I work currently right now, it's a pediatric facility. So we don't use them as often, but we do use them. And, because the diameter is so small, it makes it even trickier and harder to see that elevator channel. So there's just different challenges depending on what you're dealing with and what facility you're in. But I understand Arlene's, I mean, I'm up there like, yeah, I've been there. I've been there where they're like, let's clean this and HLD it and do it. And I'm just like, and I had to challenge a facility one time because they wanted to HLD and then on top of that do some sterilization. I'm up here like, well, you can't do multiple modes of different procedures to clean something. It's one or the other, and I think that's where people start misinterpreting and misreading IFUs and competencies and things of that nature, because it doesn't say do all of them. It says choose one, and let's continue that to be our source of truth here.
So how do you select which one how do you select which one to choose? Do you go with the facility? Because you were saying even sometimes when you follow the IFUs for people who are out there traveling, or just for people who aren't traveling, but maybe again, different hospitals, different facilities have different support systems, different educational. Everybody's not ISHM certified. Everybody's not CBSPD. Everybody doesn't have someone who can mentor you and walk you through all of these processes. Sometimes people really just have to try to use the best they can with their faculties, with their mental faculties, to be like, what's something that we can do to improve our chances? So how do you choose which method, or do we know? I don't know how to choose which method. I don't even want to pretend I do.
Well, I can tell you, rule of thumb, you go following the IFUs, of course, but when you're given the option of high-level disinfection and sterilization, you go the most rigorous, right?
Absolutely.
And the most rigorous will be sterilization. But a moment of thought here. Can you imagine a like circumstance in a different industry? This is how you understand the magnitude. Imagine if this similar circumstance were an engine component in an airplane, right? Or a motor component in an automobile, right? One of the, I remember the recall, and in 2016, Olympus, who represents about 85% of the scopes used in our country, they a scope conglomerate, 85%. They did a voluntary recall of his model Q180V. And the company would eventually replace that elevator to make it more cleanable. But during that time frame, multiple people were impacted. Even me and Sharon were talking before the show. You had some of your most skilled technicians, and skill meaning not only certified, but emotionally connected to their community, right?
Yeah.
And experience. So these professionals that were from the community, the patients were their family. We always use that scenario, clean this tray or device as if it was your relative entering those doors. Well, you actually had those scenarios where these people really put their all into it and they simply couldn't get it right. So the benefit of joy of having an organization like Amy, an organization like ISHM and SGNA, well, collectively, we were able to work with the manufacturer and to hold them accountable. To simply say, fix this, or it has to be a better way, a more safe for our community.
Yeah, I think they've tried to make those changes. I mean, I've seen the disposable options where where that piece is completely, the tip is disposable and you remove it. It's extremely costly, and so it comes back to who's gonna take on that, because it goes back to the patient, right? That's a cost for the patient now.
Who's going to absorb the cost?
Yes. So with every improvement, with trying to be as safe as we can, you just don't really get stuck into a jam, because it's going to cost us one way or the other in the grand scheme, whether it's time, time for productivity, because we're spending a lot of time on reprocessing these items, or the disposable pieces that are extremely priced at a very high price point and make it difficult.
Okay, so with some of those changes, that's one of the things. When I said Corey Ofsted in the article, it's like a 13-page article. It's very detailed. She's not the only one. There were several people that went in on this article, but Ofsted and Associates looks like they spearheaded it with Boston University Medical Center. And one of the things she says is a call for evidence-based decision maker. And Luane, what you said is after things have been on the market for a while, the FDA came back with some, because then there was some evidence. Like we could see, hey, listen, this is where these superbugs are coming from. We can't access these areas. And so even Lila, you're saying you've seen where they're trying to do some of the newer models and, make adjustments. But even with those adjustments, we still have to wait. That's one thing. I love science. And I love the fact that we let the science guide us so that we can make more informed decisions. But sometimes you have to wait to get the information so you can make that evidence-based decision, right? Or no? What do you guys?
Well, you understand this, right? We learned in cell processing that for the FDA to approve a medical device can take from weeks to months, right? And we use the term a lot, the 510K application process, or they submit what's called a pre-market approval or PMA. But this process was seen to have some gaps, right? Clearly, right?
Right.
Not that any institution or organization is flawless, but those who are the gatekeepers to the health of the country, if they fail to get it right, the first time, if they fail to leverage all available resources the first time, we find ourselves in a familiar place. We find ourselves in a place without adequate or accurate reprocessing definition for reusable masks, right? We find ourselves in a place where, although everything is written in English, right, it's not written in English that we can all comprehend, right? They speak so far and above instead of speaking to the audience that are going to be dealing with and the reprocessing of said devices. Many lessons to learn. They were hard lessons. We're still learning, from mad cow to multiple superbugs to novel coronavirus, and we learn along the way.
Beyond.
And beyond, right? We're taking some hard lessons, very hard lessons. So this just speaks to, again, the importance of folks who work in the sterile processing industry. It was because of your due diligence, your feedback, because manufacturers, there's many technicians who were asked by Olympics and Pentex and Fujiko, some of those major brands, about their feedback. How can we make this better? It wasn't the chemist, it wasn't the legislative body. It was the folks, the brilliance in sterile processing, the hands-on, who would tell you what size channel brush is gonna fit, how come that brush didn't work, et cetera, et cetera.
Again, that's the name of the show, Knowledge or Nonsense, because even with, like you said, the language has to be for everybody, like the understanding for everybody. And so some things sound good and they look good and you string together and it sounds very scientific, but for the end user is going to be like, yeah, that's beautiful, but it don't work. We can't reach it, And so, yes. So hopefully, hopefully we'll be able to, what were you about to say, Lila? I see you had a thought.
Well, I was just thinking about during the summer, I had an opportunity to do kind of a study with I can't mention the name of the company, but it was about interpreting IFUs, right? And it was it happened before a scope, and I was just like, oh, I got this because this is what I do all day, right? So I go in there very confident and sure of myself, and I could tell by about maybe a quarter of the way through, they had really started to go. They really started asking me more questions about what I did because my interpretation of the IFU was probably different from the previous people who had came in and did the same, the same trial for them. So I was just but it is to interpretation. We all have to interpret these facts. But the problem is that, what I say and how I interpret it could be very different from another facility. And that comes in with the challenges of being an educator for a network of hospitals and facilities that are processing the same types of scopes. And it comes with the challenge of also being the person who has to, when something new happens, coronavirus, for instance, and trying to pull people back into the threshold of This is nothing different. If if enzymatic isn't going to clean it, then we are in a lot more trouble. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to start thinking a little bit broader. But I had people really wanted to rewrite policies about cleaning scopes and how we decontaminate them and things of that nature, because they were scared that certain types of scopes, especially bronchoscopes, would be used on patients who were infected. And those are the type of things that you have. Those are the fears you have to kind of stop and talk to everyone about and kind of think more clearly on, because we're not dealing with something different. We're dealing with something we've already had. We know how to fight infectious diseases, what we do all day. So we need to continue to practice the same general practices that we've always taught our the staff here. But I say all that to say is just that the challenges that I'm looking at with the duodenoscopes is just that they are very challenging to clean. And every time there's another, I find that the manufacturers are getting more challenged with trying to make it so clear as to how to do it that you get yourself in the gym if you don't clean it the same way, because they can come in there and do an assessment on you and say, well, you didn't, we watched you do the scope, but you didn't do this brush. You didn't have the right size brush for this particular channel. And now you've now voided your warranty with using the product because you didn't do it the same way they is constructed in the IFU. So we kind of get ourselves in a jam with both of these theories of thought of relying on our expertise, but also relying on the IFU and putting all that hold onto the manufacturer to give us that guidance, when sometimes they can give us the letter, everything to the exact letter of the T, but then if we don't follow it correctly, then what's going to happen next, or who's to blame at that point for not processing?
And sometimes you think that sometimes the person giving the information feels like they've given it to the letter of the T. But if somebody still has to interpret, then it's not completely to the T. And so, I mean, we don't have to be afraid of it not being to the T or being to the T. We just have to realize within sterile processing that we have, a lot, like maybe we should weigh in on some things if they're not working, or if, like that's not to the T. That still leaves room for interpretation. And just like refereeing basketball, somebody be like, that's a foul, and someone else would be like, it's not. And leaving things to interpretation means you leave it can change as often as the individual changes.
Right. And what some of the good news, I'll share the link. April 10th, 2020, the FDA puts out safety communication in many forums. They sent it out by Twitter, all of their communication modes. But I'm going to read this one. It said the FDA continues to recommend that hospitals and endoscopic facilities transition to innovative duodenoscopes designs to help improve cleaning and reduce contamination between patients, including designs with disposable caps or distal ends that Lala spoke about. When using these innovative devices, remember to follow the IFUs for the assembly of the caps and distal ends. The FDA is not aware of any patient injuries related to these new innovative scope designs. So definitely visit the FDA.gov for your latest update. So there is light. It was a battle, but it was also a partnership with the legislative body, with our healthcare providers, and the manufacturers and designers of these scopes. So when folks are in unison for a common cause, without any politics or political gain, we see how fast things can come to light and be snuffed out as fast they will develop.
Okay, so for if we're working with these scopes, do you recommend that people like within SPD? Because sometimes in SPD, sometimes in life, period, people wait for somebody else to tell them to go look for something. But in SPD, like we knew we didn't have access. Like we can't really access that area like we need to. Like the educator said, she's doing 2 rounds of HLD and gas, and ETO, what I'm saying? So she knows that it's a hard instrument to clean. So when do we actually, is it safe for people in SPD to bring that to their upline, or to bring it to their manager and say, hey, or if you're in a smaller rural hospital where it's like 2 of you working in SPD and it's only 2 of you working in SPD, what would you say to that person if they're like, listen, we're having to do more to do this? Like, do we bring that to our director? Do we bring that to the OR? Like, how does that work?
Well, and you can jump in, Lila. I think you should bring it up. we have to always keep in mind that these scopes come from somewhere. These products come from someone, some company, and hold these companies accountable. Now, there's a reason why we know the name of Olympus or Pentex or whomever, and there's a phone number or website associated with these companies. So it's important that we do our due diligence rather than you fake it till you make it. This is not the industry you should do that. No, you shouldn't pretend you know how to clean a scope or any medical device that's gonna interact with a patient. So, in absence of a manager, in absence of any clear and present leadership, you can call the company. You can call your local rep, call your local vendor, and ask a question. No, you have to seek the knowledge. Seek and you shall find. Right. So,
Right.
and it's part of your duty.
Absolutely.
Right. All right. I think we should take we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna see Diney says that even with all the literature and updates, right, in 2020, there's an average of 4,500 drugs and devices pulled or recalled each year. And you know what? That may even be low end. And true, patient safety is first, like even though we may be uncomfortable or whatever, patient safety is first. If it was your mom or your child, you know what I'm saying? And they were putting that scope in there to check something going on in a family member. You would want patient safety to be paramount then. So we want to do that ourselves. You guys, let's take this quick commercial break and then we'll be right back.
Those in the know SIPS Consults. SIPS Consults is hiring. Confident, competent, and consistent. Starting as a consultant and a volunteer, SIPS has grown into a dynamic group of stellar sterile processing professionals, offering excellent benefits, 401k, and consultant in training program. We are hiring certified technicians, leads, supervisors, interim managers, educators, coordinators. Apply at recruiting@sipsconsults.com or dial 1-866-615-7977.
Hey, we're back. I wanted to, Lila,
Yeah.
before we go into Donnie's question about the recall, you had mentioned something about the bronchoscopes, and there were people who were asking, like, hey, how do we reprocess these because of things going on with COVID? Looks like, okay, I thought you had froze for a minute. So what lessons transfer from the duodenoscopes, you ought to know, from the duodenoscopes over to, like, even with the bronchoscopes, with the communication with the FDA, do you see anything? I always say, let's pull the good. If there's a process I see you and Luane doing, and I see where you guys have worked it out, how the FDA and CDC have worked it out with the duodenoscopes, and then I am encountered with something over here, I always want to try to pull the good. I don't believe that I have to reinvent the wheel every time. So if there's something that's working, so was there a way that nationwide, was there a way that you saw it was handled well with the duodenoscopes that could transfer over to when fear was attempting to take over with the bronchoscopes? Because I know some managers was like, no, we won't have that. You're going to process it the way you've always reprocessed it. Like you're going to do exactly what you've been doing with it.
Well,
I'm sorry. I just think it was just mainly making sure that that we didn't start doing anything new, because that was my concern. If you do something different, now we're going against what our policy is. And if I learned anything during this, is that you have to have a policy for everything. You should have a policy for everything. So let's not start something new. Because I was getting we should flush all of the, we use scope buddies for our flushing mechanism, and we should, do a disinfection on that every single time. Like, well, we haven't been doing the disinfection on it every single time we use it. So just because it's because we have COVID and the possibility of patients having COVID, that's not going to change if we have a scope that comes in contact with the patient. We have to believe that all of the things that we already have in place, the enzymatics, the water, all these treatments are already going to kill this virus. And so we can't start adding new processes to the already drawn out process that we have because of fear of the unknown. We have to believe that we're going to be able to do the basics and still clean and hand over a high level disinfected scope or device at the end of the process. And so that was just some of it. It was just fear. I think fear took over for some people, and you just had to kind of talk to them in that rational way of letting them know that this is not anything different. It's not anything, new, because coronavirus has been around for many years. And so let's not act like we have something that was unheard of. And we're in healthcare, and this is what we do. We've been trained to do this. We've been trained to fight infection and to prevent it in the best ways we can. So let's not, get hung up over what we don't know about this particular virus, and just continue to do things the way we always have.
That's really good, especially as I don't know where it is in your region, but in Texas definitely, like Tarrant County, I said last week they had like 4 ICU beds because what New York was experiencing in March, April, and May, Texas is now experiencing now. And within the sterilization, what you said is so good because we already do have processes that kill these, that handle these harmful pathogens and these viruses. Mm-hmm. And even though COVID is a new name and it's highly transmissible, it's still, the methods within sterile processing anyway are still effective to kill it.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead, Luane.
I also think, team, we need to look at our best examples, right? So you referenced New York. The whole world should have learned from New York and how they handled being the epicenter of this crisis. With the dynamoscopes, sterile processing, we was looking west to California, to UCLA, Ronald Reagan Medical Center. They led the way because they had 8 patients who had the superbug, and of the 8, 3 didn't make it. But from that position, they took an aggressive stance on research, and they began to educate the entire country on the do's and don'ts. So this is what makes a sterile nation a nation. You got colleagues and experts in every field that you can reach out and talk to someone. And it's not, guess what? It's not going to cost you a dime. It's going to cost you some time, some effort, some energy, but it's not going to cost you any money. So that's what makes a nation, a community, that common unity. And one thing we share in common is we all, at the beginning of the day, we want to do right by our patients. We want to do right by our patients, our physicians, and our peers. So let that be a lesson learned. Reach out, look at your examples. We don't need to keep recreating the wheel, right? Yeah. New York, I remember the talk about New York. Don't go to New York. Look at what's going on. Well, they did some things right, but we should have learned a lot from their example.
Yeah. And hopefully we did. Hopefully we did. Because like I said, even though there are a limited number of beds in Texas right now, and Texas is experiencing higher numbers than ever before. It's higher than it was even back in March and April and everything like that. And it has concern. They're experiencing that same concern that New York experienced. The only thing was, when it happened to New York had no other case studies. You know what I'm saying? They had other pandemics like from years and years ago. But now Texas, Oklahoma, these places that are experiencing the surges now, they have recent events and recent occurrences that they can learn from. And that's why I was asking Lila, even with the scopes, when they were saying that about the bronchoscopes, we could just be like, well, we know this about scopes. Let's look at the makeup of it. Let's look at the design of it. And the things we're doing are already the best practices. So,
what's interesting, very interesting to me, is that we're right now, we're in the now, right?
Yes.
At some point, we'll be in the thing. We'll be past today's events and activities and circumstances, and we'll be in a new area of new events. I'm always curious, what's going to be the new norm? We know what the new norm was after the duodenoscopes, because we're living in that present. We're in that cycle. What's the new norm after COVID? How when you walk outside, are we all walking around in the bubble suits? Like the Jetsons? Is the whole world gonna be vaccinated? We still got folks who are anti-vaccine. What's the new norm?
Dude, okay, so can we just take a hard left right quick? You said, what's the new norm? Let's go there. Look at Lila. She's like, I don't want to say too much, but I'm gonna say it because when we were on last week, one of the viewers, somebody in our audience, had asked us, do you believe healthcare workers, like, will this vaccine be mandatory for healthcare workers? You know what? I do. I do. Just like there's some people who decline the flu shot, but there are some hospitals that are like, you can't decline it. Like hospitals can mandate how they want to mandate. And I do think, not about religious purposes, not about even just about even the American way, this America, but I think just because hospitals are business entities for litigious purposes, so that they don't get sued or an outbreak that can affect their money. So people will be like, we don't want to go have our procedure over there. I do think that healthcare workers are going to be, that it's going to be a requirement. And woo, woo, woo.
I can say that I was recently took a survey from my establishment asking my opinion on getting vaccine, family getting vaccine, would I be willing to get it, and like all these type of questions. And I'm just like, well, where are we going with this, right? Because the survey is just a survey, and it was anonymous, whatever. But it had me thinking, like, well, what if that is the case? If that is, it becomes a mandatory thing to be in healthcare. This is the field of my choice. So what do you do at that point in time, whether you believe in getting vaccines or not? But it's just that to be forced and to be mandated to do something, it's a different level of, personal change.
Oh, it's coming. You know what? Why I think it's coming?
Why do you think it's coming? I'm laughing now. Here we go.
There's gonna be two polarizing sides. This election was one of the most polarizing events country. Two, some in the middle, but you were somewhere and you had picked someone. The next one up is gonna be this vaccination, right? And there's gonna be some good points on each side. Healthcare workers, you took an oath to do no harm. The vaccine is not about you; it's about the people you're trying to protect. That's gonna be one, right? And then we're gonna have your belief system, your historical differences. So get prepared to hold that weight. They're gonna put the most charismatic speakers in front of you to try to do this thing. The Billy D. Williams of politics. So it's coming.
It is.
It is, and all in the name of EUA, right? Emergency Use Authorization, because about 3 different companies or 4 different companies by now have already put in for their EUA. So
with the vaccines, yes.
I'm just like, we can EUA anything, can't we? We just can say,
you know what,
authorization, and that's the end of it.
I think the latest one is what, Moderna.
Yeah,
and they're about to have their emergency use authorization pushed through. And with the vaccines, if you're doing an emergency use for vaccines, we understand, because we need to get back to normal, because for financial reasons, the economy needs it in a certain way. But that also means that science again. We can use science from other places and make informed decisions, but they won't be as informed as if we're actually saying this vaccine did this. Like we're not going to know for a couple of years what it was like inhaling hydrogen after reprocessed mask for, it's going to take 2-3 years or such and such. So even with the vaccine, we won't know it then. And again, I'm not, if you want to take the vaccine, take the vaccine. I'm not saying take it. I'm not saying don't take it. Hey, how you doing out there in the Philippines? Thank you for joining us. Let us know if you have any questions. But yeah, I do think that vaccine is about to be required for healthcare workers. LaWayne, would you say we're in the now, but
we're in the now.
This now is going to be the then.
That's right.
Remember, you heard it here first on Knowledge and Nonsense.
Right. So you gotta consider this, right? The last healthcare disease pandemic that I can vividly remember was the AIDS pandemic. I remember the commercials. I remember the impact on my community. I remember there's so much about it. There was so much unknown. But what I also remember is how many poorer countries, right? We're about to go there for a quick second. Many poorer countries were used as case studies. I remember that as well.
Let's go there.
And if you Google or just do some slight research on how some of these trials are being mitigated in other countries so we can get the benefit here. Some of it is extremely upsetting, even in the name of science.
Yes.
And from a background of both African American and Native American historical references, we have vivid memories of some of these trials. Vivid memories. So
Come
when you
on.
talk about seeing certain populations, certain demographics, you have to take into deep consideration, not just consideration, deep consideration from what stance are they coming from? How come they're so against vaccinations? How come they, especially new vaccinations? I still know, right? It's not like we're not talking about mumps, measles, and rubella, if that's how you pronounce it. But we're talking about something brand new that we're seeing the impact. So remember, this episode is going to be played again at some point, and we're gonna at that point, Sharon, we're going to be in the now, looking back then.
Yeah, looking back at this then, exactly.
That's right.
Right.
Even up in the Dakotas right now, they're struggling. I don't know if your news stations pick that up here. Donnie said Will has already warned us. Who is Will? Are you talking about Will Smith? That's funny if she is. But up in the Dakotas right now, their doctors and their local officials, the community officials, they're like, hey, look, we don't have any beds, we don't have this. But you know what? The Dakotas is a high Native American population in the Dakotas. They still, yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. These are the communities. Disparities are real. I know I don't want to digress. Well, I do want to digress if it's a digression. But the disparities are real. And the disparities do hit certain communities more, not just because they mean to, but just the systematic way things are set up. It's going to hit that way,
And look, no one's sitting here. This is not a show about anti-vaxxers, right? That's not what this is, right? Because I can guarantee you, everyone that's on this panel has taken some vaccine at some point, right?
Yes.
It's not realistic that you have not. But when we're talking about what we've seen with the progression of this virus and how certain communities, especially Black and brown communities and poor communities, have been impacted directly with the death rate, with the rate of hospitalization, recovery, is things that make you wonder, what can be done different? A victim is only going to be a victim, but for so long, right? At some point, science and history have to qualify the ends or the means.
Yeah.
Qualify the ends. So we are going to see. What I'm encouraged about?
What?
For the first time, I'm switching to politics just a little bit because it's just a small, tiny pivot. We have so many brilliant, intelligent women in the Biden administration. I'm talking about from the Department of Finance to all across the board. His department is a majority of women leaders, and I think that's important. I think that's really important to bring a different, not just motherly, right? Because that's a natural aspect. You think of women, think of motherly, but you think of a different norm. It's not what we're used to seeing, that's something to prove.
And it's not what we're used to seeing, which is why things like, not to make it about Hollywood, but Black Panther, when people saw Black Panther, there was a lot of support for it because that's not what we're used to seeing. But Ruth Ginsburg, the one who recently passed, the Supreme Court Justice, they had asked her, how many women do you think is enough to have in the Supreme Court? And she was like 9. And the person who asked her the question was taken aback, like, why would you want all women? And she said, well, it's been all men for so long, and that was never a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, the fact that if you look at it and it's men, then nothing's amiss. But if it's all women, all of a sudden you're like, oh, they can't do it because they're women. I mean, she did it to point out that unconscious bias that we all have. It was crazy. But I was like, oh, she kind of right. Because when I see, like looking at Biden, looking at those appointments, I was like, this looks like America. It doesn't look like the America that we put forth. Like, this looks like America. And I'm excited about it.
Right. And I think this is what scares some people, right? It's not about race, right? No one wins the race in racism. It's not about race, right? but there are clear differences. The Greek philosopher Plato said it. He said, in every city, there's two cities. There's one, there's one with vast resources, and there's one with none. And the one with the vast resources is the one that gets promoted. This is a city that you see on a postcard.
Wait, let me stop you. Let me stop you, please. But hold that thought, because I'm going to let you back in. This is why we do knowledge and nonsense. Listen, you guys are out there. This is CS Nation, CS Assist. I love you. Thank you for sponsoring the show. SIPS Consults, thank you for sponsoring the show. But this is what we do. He just said, wherever you are, there's going to be two countries, one with vast resources and one with none. And for so long, sterile processing has had no voice, no this, no that, no this, no that. And we've just some people fuss about it in the break room. Some people actually go and try to make a difference about it. Kudos to your Sharon Green Goldens and your Brian Reynolds. People who are like willing to give up their time even outside of the department to improve this field. But listen, because this is key knowledge. This is key knowledge that you can apply within the department.
Right.
He's not rambling about something else. This is what can be applied in the department. This is why you see individuals like Nasir Evans and what's my man's name, Dante. Using their certification and having businesses, viable, sustainable businesses that are outside of the department, because they understand there's two countries, one with resources and one without. And hello, CS Nation, we want you to be ones with resources. Quit waiting on somebody to tell you you are the subject matter expert. Okay, I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. Right? Because you have a job, and at first your goal was to get a job. Now that you got the job, now your goal is to become an expert in your role, so you can open the door for someone else. At least that should be one of your goals, right? Yeah. Use your platform to the best of your ability. You are your own. You are your biggest hurdle. You're your biggest barrier. If you get past you can come sit with us. And us represents all of those creative minds, all of those innovators, all of those folks who are not comfortable with just the norm. You have to give up yourself and get out your own way.
I'm sorry, I must type that in to the comments. You said if you get past you can come sit with us.
Absolutely.
I love that.
That's a bold statement.
Absolutely.
And if your perspective ain't right, you'll take it wrong. But I hope you take it right and come sit with us. Past
Absolutely.
You can come sit with us.
Yeah, plenty of seats available.
It made me
what did it make you think?
Someone just said to me recently, a couple days ago, maybe, they were just like, well, why do you go so hard sometimes? I'm just like, I don't know no other way to go, because I know I'm doing it for the person that comes behind me, the next educator that comes through and needs to be able to have this voice heard and have people respect their opinion and understand that it's coming from a place of knowledge and experience. And that's why I can't stop myself. I have to continue to speak out and say what I need to say, and challenge those in authority that need to be challenged, because sometimes they don't make the right choices, and it's okay, because we all learning in the end of the day. But that's why, and because I've trying to earn my seat, and I want to sit there with a bounty in front of me, and not just sitting there and waiting for someone to throw me some scraps, but I want to sit there with things to offer as well.
Again, and what you just said, that first question to me, is what Ruth was saying when she challenged the perspective of that person who said, how many women? They said, why you go so hard? Why don't you? That's the question back. Right. Why you go so hard? Why you go so easy? Why don't you go at all? But that's the perspective right there. That's the perspective.
Imagine if going hard was the bare minimum. That's just the bare minimum. Imagine how far we would be in every regard. I had a conversation with my, I have an 18-year-old son, right? And he's working at a marketing company. And as part of his job is he has to stand in BJ's or Costco and say, hey, this month is AT&T. Next month is Vivint, whatever it is. So I saw him leave. He got ready for work one day. He's home from college, and he didn't have a tie on. And I said, where's your tie? Where's your suit jacket? Oh, the dress code is only nice dress pants. I said, if the dress code is only dress pants, you're supposed to go 10 times hard, go above. Show up in the school. Are they going to tell you you're overdressed? No, they're going to respect you that you're taking your role that much serious. It's not about the money, right? It's about the effort you're going to invest and be able to divest someplace else. So go hard or go home.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And even doing after this, look, we have totally left to do out on the scopes. But if you have questions about it, then put it in there because we handle it, and we actually put some links in there to help you with those scopes. But I'm with that. Go hard or go home. Go hard or go home. And even in this year, like when COVID did what COVID did in 2019, and it shook all of the systems. Okay, and a lot of people have COVID fatigue. So don't get fatigued again. That is when you go hard or go home. I know it's when everybody is shaking in their boots, or everything's crazy and tipsy-turvy. That's when you lean in. If everybody is tipsy-turvy, they need somebody to hold the ship, or they need somebody to guide the ship, or they need somebody to just upright the ship. Whatever it is, there are needs because everything's topsy-turvy. If everything's in the air, you can catch anything. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Lean in. Yeah,
That's
go hard
right.
or go home.
That's it. Listen, COVID fatigue, we're all tired. We're all afraid, but we process it just a little differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We process it just a little differently. We know the one thing that this virus can't stop is time. No matter what happens, tomorrow's coming. It's coming whether we want it to come or not. But it's important that we show up and show up at our best. There's so many stories we can pull from. We talk about some of these. Listen, I think, Sharon, the rest of December, we should tap into some of the artistry in our community. There's a lot of brilliance outside of SPD. I got a filmmaker who wants to come on and tell us about. He has 3 films on Amazon Prime right now. Super low, but brilliant. So because he's going hard, right? You don't get stuck on your one trait. The world is so much bigger.
No. Listen, and we have it with SPD a few Tuesdays from now. Derek, I don't know if you guys know Derek Jones. Derek Jones will be on. He's someone who's been in SPD maybe a third of the time other individuals have, but he came in and he went hard the whole time. He's like, how do I learn this? How do I do this? How do I do that? All the way up through management. And now he's doing other things where he has straight up, like different businesses, and he's setting it up that people in his community a pipeline into the hospital. Like, this is a wide open field. He said, even right now, there are 40. I talked to him today. There are 40 positions open in his city in SPD. And instead of him saying it's always this and people run from hospital to hospital, he's like, you know what? This is something that can benefit the community as well. This is a wide open field. And so he's setting it up. So yeah, you're right. In the department and out of the department, because it's possible.
That's right. Listen, Google Black Wall Street, straight up. Google all these amazing innovators. In every community. We have examples. You have examples in your own household. You have examples everywhere. We just got to tap into that latent skill set and know that you are so much more than just your job.
Yeah.
So
your
much.
job is winning because you're there. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And here's the thing, too. I want to say this, Lorraine. The reason we say this and we go so hard with this within CS Nation is because we see the individuals that work in CS. We see the people who work in SPD. We communicate with them. Every year at Isham, we're talking to people. We're talking to people even when it's not Isham. Mm-hmm. We see the intellect. We see the intelligence. We see the faithfulness. What are the qualities of a man? Attention to detail. What are you talking about? Attention to detail. The details are what derails so many other people. But in SPD, you have attention to detail. You have faithfulness. You have the ability to be dependable. You have focus. There's so many qualities within SPD. Listen, don't let how somebody else treat you be how you treat yourself when it's a bad thing.
That's right. That's right. It's just, I always get amazed when I travel the country to different hospitals and I meet a technician who, although they have a tracking system, and we have some brilliant, robust tracking systems out there, they have memorized every single tray, every instrument, not only every instrument, but the order, how their physician likes to associate every single tray, every instrument, not only the order and association, but also the day of week. they know the temperature of the environment. So these are skills you can't buy. So no one can show you this type of skill. This is something you pick up, and it's a specialized skill set. So when I'm on LinkedIn and I tell my peers and ask me that you matter, you really do matter, and you need to understand how much you matter. But once you understand that value, that worth, you'll begin to leverage that to your advantage.
Right.
Excellent.
You know,
Excellent. Go
and
ahead.
you know certain doctors on, and you know what they like, and you know they have it ready because that's what they're gonna. I mean, it comes with just being seasoned in your craft, and you know how to do your job well. People look for you. They know when you're not around because everything's off. I mean, that's just a sign of that you are excellent at what you do and
Yeah,
outstanding.
you're a go-to person. Yeah. So that's one of listen, we love what we get to do on Knowledge and Nonsense. And I know sometimes for me, sometimes I'll go hard on individuals in CS because it's like Luane with his son, that's expected. His son is 18. But sometimes I'm talking to people and they're not 18 and they still trying to do the minimum, but they want the most. And I kind of go hard on them because I want the most for you, but I also want the most out of you. Quit bringing me 10 cents and expecting to get $1.50. You stop that. You stop that. You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna want the $1.50, you beat $1.50. You walk in that $1.50. And so as Donnie says, act like you matter. We use the hashtags. We matter, better together. You matter, I matter. These things matter. So it matters. It matters how you approach it. It matters how you approach things. And don't complain about things if you don't want things to change. I love you. I promise I do.
Real talk. When I need a wake up call, I need somebody to I call Sharon. She's that person that give me that sound advice to go, look, this is what you need to do. This is how you navigate through this. Because I don't know all the answers either, and you need someone that you pull on your mentors and your good colleagues to help you figure out how to navigate through these situations. Because sometimes when you're in it, you can't see clearly, and you just need someone to be able to give you that advice to kind of steer you in the right way, so you can continue to be at service and be at your best.
Myself too. When I need it, I call Donnie Payne. I call Sharon Green Golden. I call Luane. I'm like, hey, this is it. This is what I'm thinking. This is what this looks like. These are the facts of the matter. And or if sometimes sometimes somebody at your job make you so mad, you're like, I don't want to help them. So you need somebody else to come and just say, you know what? It's not you helping them. It's you helping you. And you can't let them become your lead. You so focused on what you ain't going to do for them. Now they're your thing every day. They're your compass every day. You revolving around them, So
powerful, right? You are the most important person in your universe.
Yeah.
Everything revolves around you. And once you understand that, you'll also comprehend that nothing you will ever experience that's new, that someone else hasn't already experienced and dealt with. So you're definitely not alone. Reach out. This is we say SPD Nation for a reason. Call us to the task. We're here to support you.
Yes, absolutely. Man, that time flew by. So we did about half hour there. I'm sorry we weren't able to see Nasir, but throughout December we are celebrating individuals. And Luane, what you said is great. Yeah, let's bring some of those individuals on. Those will be great for the Saturday shows. But we're celebrating people. So if you know someone who's done a great job this year, don't be stingy with the praise. Send their name and their email address to me at info@ucdileadership.com. If you just remember SIPS and CS Assist, then send it to info@CS Assist or info@SIPS and say, hey, I was watching the show and this person has done a great job. So if you know somebody who was able to hold their team together through everything going on with COVID, or who was able to stay at work, or who was able to set up, food drives in their communities when everything else was crazy in December, that's all we want to do. We just want to celebrate people. We're going to celebrate people all month. So don't be stingy with the praise and be like, oh, I should have said such and such's name. No, don't should it. Do it. People did some really good things this year. I know it's been crazy, but some really, really good things have happened this year. And so we want to be sure to celebrate that. Hey, you guys have anything before I play this final commercial and we go out?
No, I can't believe we're in December, right? So
right.
You got 3 more weeks, people, to reach them goals of 2020. You got plenty of time. Let's get to it.
Yeah, let's do that. Also, for those of you that are out there, and don't be trying to be funny and send yourself. If there is somebody in proximity to you or that you know that need some help, you can send their name, phone number, and address, or name and email address, and just say, hey, this is somebody that we know is going through a lot right now throughout this month, and allow myself and my sponsors to be able to help somebody make it through this upcoming month.
Absolutely.
Again, don't be stingy. Share the love. Be a part of the solution. And so, yeah. All right, y'all be safe. God bless, and thanks for being with us today. I'll see y'all later. Lila and Luane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
Same here. Have a good night.